Direction. In this video, we are going to see about direction. What is direction? The parenthetical statements in a script instructing a performer in the general reading of a line or giving him or her general instructions for movement. The instructions the director gives to any performer or member of the production crew. The above figure describes the role of director as the directors give instructions to their crew. Originally in French, mise en scène, pronounced mise en scène, means staging an action, and it was first applied to the practice of directing plays. Film directors or scholars extending the term to film direction use the term to signify the director's control over what appears in the film frame. Mise en scène includes setting, lighting, costume, and the behavior of the figures for the director to stage an event for the camera. Use of space. In this video, we are going to see about use of space. The filmmaker, with the help of the elements of mise en scène, can arrange the frame graphically and make the viewers to look at the frame in what way he wants them to look at. Since the image projected on a screen is flat and has a composition within a frame, just as a still photograph or a painting would, only the arrangement of the mise en scène can create the light and dark shapes. Thus, the movement of our eyes and attention across the screen are guided by a complex interaction of the flat composition and represented depth. The space in mise en scène will follow the following four aspects for the viewers to follow: movement, color, balance, size. Movement. Always a moving shape will draw our attention more than the static shapes, even if the movement is far off to on edge of the screen. Color. We are all familiar from our experience with painting the importance of color in a composition. Bright colors draw the eye more than the subdued color. Warm colors in the red, orange, yellow range seems to come forward to us, while cool colors from purple to green recede. The filmmakers can take advantage of these principles. Balance. It is crucial in determining whether to concentrate on one area of the screen or scan it. Many shots place a single figure at the center of the frame and minimize other distracting elements at the sides. Size. The effect or size is fairly obvious. Generally, we will look at the larger shapes first and then scan for the relations to smaller ones. But movement, color, and balance can easily override size, as compositional cues can draw our attention quickly at very small areas of the screen. The other qualities of the screen space are that it provides a sense of three-dimensional space through depth cues. Depth cues are created by lighting, setting, costumes, and figure behavior. They suggest that a space has volume and depth. When we see of an object as having volume, we mean that it is solid and occupies space not just from side to side and top to bottom, but also from front to back. The overall relation of foreground to background is called as planes. The distance from the foreground plane to the background plane may be shallow or deep, and other planes in between may create a middle ground as well. Depth cues pick out different planes in the shot, and these enable us to distinguish foreground and background. Only a blank screen has a single plane. Whenever a shape, even an abstract one, appears, we will perceive it as being in front of the background. aerial perspective. It is the hazing of more distant planes and is another depth cue. We tend to see clearer elements as belonging to the foreground. Many films use lighting and lens focus to blur the setting to make the closer objects stand out more. Size diminution. It is another depth cue. That is, figures and objects farther away from us seem to get proportionally smaller. The smaller the figure appears, the farther away we believe it to be. This reinforces our sense of there being a deep space with considerable distances between the various planes. Use of time. In this video, we are going to see about use of time. Time in mise en scene emphasizes not only what to look at, but also when to look at. Thus, mise en scene helps compose the film shot in space and time. Setting, lighting, costume, makeup, and figure behavior interact to create patterns of foreground and background, line and shape, light and dark, and movements. Montage. The process of editing a film, of assembling all the shots, scenes, and sequences into the final motion picture. The foundation of Podolkin's and Eisenstein's editing styles can be traced to the Kuleshov workshop at the State Film School in Moscow, which was called as Kuleshov's effect. Eisenstein's theory of montage, on the other hand, has been referred to as one of collision. He himself uses the terms linkage and collision in his writing, where the emphasis is on a dynamic juxtaposition of individual shots that calls attention to itself and forces the viewer consciously to come to conclusions about the interplay of images, while he or she is also emotionally and psychologically affected in a less conscious way. Here, montage is a more artistic kind of editing where the emphasis is less on the impact of the sequence of images upon the viewer. The process of placing film images in a sequence so that new dimensions of space and time are created. Two shots filmed in different places can be placed together so that both appear to belong to the same locations. A single event can be photographed and then edited in such a way that its duration can either be shortened or lengthened, hence existing in a temporarily that exists nowhere but in the film. A series of jump cuts, dissolves, and superimpositions are employed in a short period of time. Narrative. In this video, we are going to see about narrative. A narrative is a sign with a signifier and signified story or mental image or a semantic representation. The signifier can have many different semiotic manifestations. It can consist, for instance, of a verbal act of storytelling, diegetic narration, or of gesture and dialogue performed by actors, mimetic or dramatic narration. The term basically means any story that is narrated by someone but also has come to mean the story in any art form, even in drama and film. Here, unlike literature, there is normally no narrator. The narrative is not the story itself but rather the telling of the story, which is why it is so often used in phrases such as written narrative, oral narrative, etc. Film narrative is the depiction in the medium of film of a series of events in cause and effect relationship occurring in time. For a narrative to be meaningful, it must consist of logically sound cause and effect relationship. Fictional filmmaking is another term for narrative cinema. The word fictional doesn't imply that such movies are purely based on fictive events. This freedom allows the director to shape the movie and perfect the story. The storylines in James Cameron's Titanic. One of the many reasons why Titanic broke a box office record was because the audience could identify with Jack and Rose and root for them. Classical Hollywood paradigm. In this video, we are going to see about classical Hollywood paradigm. A term in semiotics, the science of signs, which refers to a word's significance that arises from its being chosen instead of other possible words. Semiotics also considers the syntactic relationships of words, that is how they achieve significance from their relationship with other words. Place horizontal line, the sequence of words in the sentence. Paradigmatic refers to the words vertical that exist behind it or can be seen as listed beneath it. Semiotics can be applied to film, which is made up of a number of sign systems. One can discuss not only the paradigmatic significance or connotation of a word, phrase, or gesture, but also the paradigmatic implications of a particular shot, why it was used instead of other shots. Figure describes the Max Ophuls' adaptation to and subversion of classical Hollywood cinema and their effect on his European filmmaking. Figure describes the pseudo-iterative in Hollywood classical cinema. Alternative paradigms, Indian, continental. In this video, we are going to see about alternative paradigms. The classical Hollywood paradigm always insists to use particular type of shot for a particular situation. Like when you introduce a powerful character, the camera will mostly be kept in a low angle, and to establish a low profile of a character, a high angle will be kept. Every director can have his own style, and the shot selection is left to his choice. The Indian and continental film is not an exemption to this theory. The song and dance sequences of Indian films are the best example for this. They break all the rules set by the classical Hollywood paradigm. The camera. In this video, we are going to see about the camera. A camera is an optical instrument that records images that can be stored directly, transmitted to another location, or both. These images may be still photographs or moving images such as videos or movies. A camera may work with the light of a visible spectrum or with other portions of the electromagnetic spectrum. A still camera is an optical device which creates a single image of an object or scene and records it on an electronic sensor or photographic film. All cameras use the same basic design. The light enters an enclosed box through a converging lens, and an image is recorded on a light-sensitive medium. A shutter mechanism controls the length of time that light can enter the camera. Most photographic cameras have functions that allow a person to view the scene to be recorded, allow for a desired part of the scene to be in focus, and to control the exposure so that it is not too bright or too dim. A data display, often a liquid crystal display that is LCD, permits a user to view settings such as film speed, exposure, and shutter speed. A film or video camera operates similarly to a still camera, except it records a series of static images in rapid succession, commonly at a rate of 24 frames per second. When the images are combined and displayed in order, the illusion of motion is achieved. Handling of actors. In this video, we are going to see about handling of actors. The director may also control the behavior of various figures in the mise-en scene, like how he controls the other three aspects: settings, costume, makeup, and lighting. An actor's performance in a film consists of the following two basic elements: visual, appearance, gestures, and facial expressions. Sound, voice, diction, pronunciation, and modulation. It is not always correct to judge an actor's performance by its believability in relation to some view we may already have of reality. Instead, we should judge an actor's performance by what kind of an acting style the film is cueing us to accept. We should always be cautious in using the term realism as a criterion for examining acting. The best way to analyze an actor's performance is how the actor looks and behaves in a manner appropriate to his or her character's function in the overall context of the film. If the actor satisfies the above-mentioned criteria, then he has given a good performance, otherwise bad performance. It is not necessary for the actor to behave as a real person might in such circumstances. There are various styles of acting, but it is broadly classified into the following three categories: overacting, normal acting, underacting. Film acting is different from stage acting. Handling decors. A famous French film critic André Bazin says, "The human being is important in the theatre, but the drama on the screen can exist without actors." A banging door, a leaf in the wind, waves beating on the shore can brighten the dramatic effect. Some film masterpieces use man only as an accessory, like an extra or in counterpoint to nature, which is the true leading character. Recording direct sound. In this video, we are going to see about recording direct sound. Indigenous sound that derives from a source in the scene. Sound immediately recorded with one microphone and without interruption during each shot while filming on location. Such sound does not depend on a later mix of various tracks but presents all the sound voices and background as they are recorded at the same time. Direct sound is frequently used in documentaries and sometimes in fictional films for documentary effect. Background of noise and atmospheric sounds is all of the sounds that occur naturally in any specific recording location. Concept of sound design. In this video, we are going to see about the concept of sound design. Most of the people assume that the image produced during the production has an appropriate noise recorded at the time. In the process of film production, the soundtrack is recorded separately and can be manipulated independently later on. Some of the advantages of sound for a film. First, it engages another sense mode. Visual attention can be accompanied by an oral attention. Second, sound can actively shape how people interpret the image. The third advantage of sound is it can direct their attention quite specifically within the image. In such ways, sound can guide them through the images, pointing to things to watch, what to look for, and when to look for. The fourth advantage of sound is it cues them to form expectations. Horror and mystery films often utilize this power of sound from an unseen source to engage audience interest. But not only horror films use this option. All types of films can take advantage of this aspect of sound. The fifth and final advantage of sound is it gives the filmmaker many creative possibilities. Like editing, when the editor joins shots of any two spaces to create meaningful relations, the filmmaker can mix any sonic phenomena into a whole. On the whole, with the introduction of sound in cinema in 1926, it has created a power of the infinity of visual possibilities along with that of the infinity of acoustics. Acoustic properties. In this video, we are going to see about the concept of acoustic properties. The following are some of the basic qualities of sound which are familiar to us from people's day-to-day experiences. Loudness, pitch, timbre. Loudness. Loudness results from the vibrations in the air. The amplitude of the vibrations produces people's sense of volume. Film sound constantly manipulates volume. For example, in many films, we have seen a long shot of a busy street accompanied by loud traffic noises, but in the same shot, when they see two people meet and start to speak, the loudness of the traffic noise drops. The second option is, it is used to differentiate characters by their voices. A dialogue between a soft-spoken character and a ruffian will show the difference. The third option, the loudness is also used to show the distance. Often the louder the sound, they perceive the source to be closer and vice versa. But some films exploit radical changes in volume for shock value. Pitch. The frequency of the sound vibrations governs pitch, or they can say it as the highness or lowness of the sound. Pitch gives the difference between a male voice and a female voice. It helps distinguish music from other sounds in the film. For example, when Bernard Herrmann, music director of the Alfred Hitchcock's film Psycho, obtained the unnatural bird-like shrieking effects in the film, many musicians could not recognize the source, which nothing but the violence was played at extraordinarily high pitch. Timbre. Timbre is the harmonic components of a sound, which gives a certain color or tone quality to it. When people refer someone's voice nasal or a certain musical tone mellow, they are referring to timbre. Timbre helps to differentiate musical instruments from one another. As the fundamental components of film sound, loudness, pitch and timbre usually interacts to define the sonic texture of a film. It also helps to distinguish among all of the sounds in a film. Much of a sound's unique timbre is a result of its particular transient qualities. Transients are the attack and decay or beginning and ending characteristic of a sound. Selection and combination. In this video, we are going to see about selection and combination. Sound in cinema takes three forms. They are speech, music, and noise. Noise can also be called as sound effects. Filmmakers have freely exploited these ambiguities. For example, in the movie Psycho, when a woman screams, people expect to hear a human voice. Instead, we hear screaming violence. So, now filmmakers should consider how speech, music, and noise are selected and combined for specific functions within films. The creation of the soundtrack resembles the editing of the image track. Just as the filmmaker selects from several shots the best image, they may choose what exact bit of sound from this or that source will best serve the purpose. The filmmaker may link or superimpose images or join any two sounds end to end or one over another, as with commentary over music. On the whole, the manipulation of the soundtracks needs as much selection and control as does the visual track. Selection of the desired sound is the first step in the process. Normally, people ignore irrelevant sound and retain what is most useful at a particular moment. The microphone is unselective during production and noticed, and unwanted sounds gets registered. Like the camera lens, it does not automatically achieve the desired result. Sound studios, camera blimps, directional and shielded microphones, sound engineering and editing, libraries of stock sounds all exist for a filmmaker so that a film's soundtrack may be carefully controlled through selection. By selecting the sounds, the director can control the audience's choices about what to pay attention to. The filmmaker does not depend only on selection but also on the combination of various sonic elements. It is done by mixing. In modern filmmaking, dozen or more separate tracks are recorded and later mixed. The mixer can control the volume and duration of each sound precisely. The possibilities of combining sounds are well illustrated in the final battle sequence of Akira Kurosawa's Seventh Samurai. The selection and combination of sound materials also affect the film as a whole. So far, people have seen how the speech and noise had a rich interplay in shaping the overall sonic texture of a film. Music. In this video, we are going to see about music. The filmmaker can select the pre-existing pieces of music to accompany the images. The meter, rhythm, melody, harmony, and instrumentation of the music can strongly affect the viewer's emotional reactions. A melody or musical phrase can be associated with a particular character, setting, situation, or idea. By manipulating such motifs, the filmmaker can compare the scenes, trace out the patterns of development in the narration of the story, and can give implicit meanings. The music can associate the viewers to the period to which it belongs. The music can also be used for the situations. In India, situational songs are done. The music is also used as a motif. Motif is an element in a film which is repeated in a significant way throughout the film. Thus, a musical score in the film can create, develop, and associate motifs that enter into the film's overall formal system. In this topic, dimensions of film sound includes the way in which the sounds relate to other film elements, which gives them several other dimensions. First, sound occupies duration, it has rhythm. Second, sound can relate to its perceived source with greater or lesser fidelity. Third, sound conveys a sense of spatial conditions in which it occurs. And fourth, the sound relates to visual events that takes place in a specific time, and this relationship gives sound a temporal dimension. Rhythm. In this video, we are going to see about rhythm. A sound's rhythm will be defined by its speed and regularity. The reverberating note of a large gong may go on for many seconds and may seem slow in rhythm to the perceiver, while a sudden sneeze occupies only an instant. Sounds can come with a greater or lesser regularity. The above-mentioned qualities can be combined in different ways. A film's sound may be slow and irregular, fast and regular, and so on. The three types of sound, speech, noise, and music all have their own rhythmic possibilities independent of one another on the soundtrack. The movements in the images themselves have a rhythm. The most common tendency for the filmmaker is to match visual and sonic rhythms to each other. For example, the dance sequence in a musical. Another example of close coordination between screen movement and sound comes in the animated films of Walt Disney. Mickey Mouse and the other Disney characters often move in exact synchronization with the music. This non-dance matching of movement with music in fact came to be known as Mickey Mousing. Fidelity. In this video, we are going to see about fidelity. Fidelity of a sound is nothing but whether the sound is faithful to the source or not. If a shot shows us a barking dog and the soundtrack was a barking noise, then that sound is faithful to its source. Fidelity has nothing to do with the sound, what was originally made during shooting. The filmmaker may manipulate sound independently of image. In post-production, the bark or meow might be treated electronically or by an animal imitator. Here, fidelity does not mean the quality of recording, but its faithfulness to the source. Fidelity involves conventional expectations about the sources. The viewers need not have the knowledge of where the filmmaker actually obtained the sound. Playing with the fidelity is most commonly used for comic effects in films and also occurs in animated cartoons. Not all the time, the manipulation of fidelity is used for comic purposes. Some non-faithful sounds have serious functions too. Finally, in some special cases, the fidelity is manipulated by a change in volume. A sound may seem unreasonably loud or soft in relation to other sounds in the film. Volume can be altered in ways that are not faithful to the sources. It is mainly used to show the character's point of view. Here, the sound device enables the narration to achieve subjective depth. The shift in fidelity thus functions to suggest a psychological state of a character. The re-recording for the cartoon characters in an animated film. The sound recorder must be suitable to the source. Space. In this video, we are going to see about space. Sound has spatial dimension because it comes from a source, and that source may be defined by the space it occupies. If the source of a sound is a character or object in the story space of the film, then we call the sound diegetic. The voice of the character, sounds made by the objects in the story, or music represented as coming from the instrument in the story space is all diegetic sound, as shown in figure. Diegetic sound is often hard to notice because it may seem to come from the world of the film naturally, as when characters speak their lines of dialogue. On the other hand, there is no diegetic sound which is represented as coming from a source outside the story space. Music added to enhance the film's action is the most common type of non-diegetic sound. When a character is climbing a sheer cliff and tense music comes up, we do not expect to see an orchestra performing on the side of the mountain. Non-diegetic sound effects are also possible. The non-diegetic sounds create comedy by making a sort of audio-visual PUN. Possibilities of diegetic sound. People know that the space of the narrative action is not only limited to what they see on the screen at any given moment. Diegetic sound can be either on-screen or off-screen depending on whether its source is within the frame or outside the frame. If the source of the sound is in the story diegetic and visible within the frame, then it is called as on-screen diegetic. And if the source of the sound come from within the story again diegetic but are now coming from the space outside the frame is called as off-screen diegetic. The off-screen diegetic sound usually functions to make narrative less restricted since it gives us story information about events occurring in two different spaces at once. Other possibilities for diegetic sound. When a filmmaker wants to use sound to represent the thought process of a character, people hear the character's voice speaking his or her thoughts even though that character's lips do not move and other characters cannot hear these thoughts. Here the narration uses sound to achieve subjectivity, giving them insight into the mental subjectivity of the character. Such spoken thoughts are comparable to mental images on the visual track, which can also be called as visual flashback. A character can also remember words, bits of music, or events as represented by sound effects. This device is so common that we need to distinguish between internal and external diegetic sound. External diegetic sound has a physical source in the scene. It is objective and which they assume that the characters in the scene can also hear. Internal diegetic sound is that which comes only from the mind of a character. It is subjective. Although the audience can hear the sound, people assume that the other characters in the scene cannot. Non-diegetic and internal diegetic sounds are often called as sound over because they do not come from the real space of the scene. In recent years, technical developments have added the possibilities of stereo and other multi-channel systems to the filmmaker's range. This means that the sound can suggest location not only in terms of distance but also by specifying direction. Multiple channels make it possible to delineate space precisely. Time. In this video, we are going to see about time. Sound relates temporally to filmic images in three ways. They are through story time, plot time, screen duration. Story time. Story time is usually the longest and includes the time of events that we infer as having happening earlier than the events we witness. Plot time. Plot time shows as selected events, but it covers a shorter span than the complete story events. Screen duration. Screen duration or viewing time equals the length of the film itself. Sound offers one way for the filmmaker to create complex relations among these three types of time. The time of the soundtrack may or may not be the same as that of the image. The matching of sound with the image in terms of our viewing time creates synchronous sound. When a sound is synchronized with the image, people hear it at the same time as they see the source produce the sound on the screen. Most dialogue between characters is matched so that the lips of the actors move at the same time that we hear the appropriate words. When the sound goes out of synchronization, the result is quite distracting. Then it is called as asynchronous sound. If the sound occurs earlier or later than the story events of the image, it is called as non-simultaneous sound. Non-simultaneous sound is one way the film can give us information about story events without showing them to us, as in a sonic flashback. Diegetic sound can occur in a time either earlier or later than the time of the image. Most non-diegetic sound has no relevant temporal relationship to the story. Lighting. In this video, we are going to see about lighting. Lighting can manipulate an image and also creates an impact. Lighter and darker areas within the frame help to create the overall composition of each shot and hence fix our eyes to certain objects and actions. Lighting shapes objects by creating highlights and shadows. There are two basic types of shadows: cast shadows, attached shadows. Lighting can be categorized in four major features. They are quality, direction, source, color. Quality refers to the relative intensity of the illumination. It can be either hard or soft. Hard lighting creates defined shadows, whereas soft lighting creates diffused illumination. Direction. The direction of lighting in a shot refers to the path of light from its source to the object lit. We can distinguish the direction of lighting in the following ways. Frontal lighting eliminates shadows and gives a flattened look. Side lighting is used to sculpt the actor's features. Backlighting defines depth by sharply distinguishing an object from its background. Underlighting suggests that the lighting comes from below the subject, and it can also be used to create an off-screen fire effects. Top lighting is mostly used as a spotlight which shines from above. Source. A shot will rarely have only one source of light. In Hollywood parlance, it is defined as three-point lighting. They are key light, fill light, and backlight. Key source is the primary lighting source of the image, providing a dominant illumination and creating dominant shadows. Fill is used to soften or eliminate shadows created by the key light. Backlight is used to differentiate between the foreground and background. Color. While using transparent color filters, the filmmaker can make the illumination of a scene with any color. Natural lighting. In this video, we are going to see about natural lighting. Lighting for a scene that originated from sources other than studio luminaires. The term is most often used to describe daylight or illumination from the sun, but also applies to any illumination from actual sources in the scene such as candles, a fireplace, or lamps. The natural lighting condition, which again requires a sunny day with a limited number of clouds present in the sky. However, unlike in the case of direct sunlight, your subject is positioned within an area of shade. This shade can be caused by anything that can block the subject from direct sunlight and typically includes things such as trees or even hills. You can easily create your own open shade lighting conditions through holding up a piece of cardboard or another opaque object to block the light from your subject. By reducing the harshness created by direct sunlight, your lighting conditions become much more complementary towards your subject. Artificial lighting. In this video, we are going to see about artificial lighting. The light created for a scene, normally from electrical sources as opposed to light from a natural source such as the sun. Artificial lighting can be the making or breaking of the aesthetic of a film. Also used in photography, the use of artificial lighting will benefit your film if you learn to use it correctly. Light can draw attention to specific area of interest and create wonderful effects by its interplay with dark areas.